Hey guys, my apologies. The camera that we usually use actually was not working, so I'm going to be a little bit not as good as I usually look, a little bit more grainy, but I'll have it working for next time. Let's go specifically into what this video is doing and what you need to know about how this is going to happen. All right, let's go into specifically an article written about essentially how the government looks at Social Security benefits for those individuals who want to own a firearm. Let's go into it. Once again, my apologies. This is not the normal camera we use. It just junked or it's not working. All right. Can you own a gun while on disability benefits? This is from MidwestDisability.com. Cool article. Let's go straight into it. By Frank Delarosio, February 23rd, 2021. Here in the Midwest, it's not uncommon to own a firearm. Jeffrey Harrington, howdy. Hive Runner, howdy. Faith Moore, howdy. Here in the Midwest, it's not uncommon to own a firearm. According to a 2017 survey by the Pew Research Center, the South is the region with the most guns, about 36%, followed by the Midwest and West, 32% and 31% respectively. And the Northeast, 16%. Although the Second Amendment protects the right of the people to keep and bear arms, the right to receive Social Security benefits if you are a gun owner is not necessarily guaranteed under the Constitution. Currently, Social Security Administration does have a few reasonable restrictions on guns. An individual may not bring a firearm into a Social Security office, for example, but at present, the administration has no law in effect that prevents an individual from owning a firearm while collecting disability benefits. Pretty interesting. Okay, here I'll adjust that a little. In December 2016, Social Security Administration did issue a rule indicating the administration would implement provisions of the NICS Improvements Amendments Act, the NIAA, to identify disability recipients who meet certain criteria for background checks. Essentially, those individuals who have been adjudicated as incapable of handling their own affairs because of a mental impairment. However, in February 2017, this rule was overturned by House Joint Resolution 40 before it came into effect. With the recent change in leadership, those applying for disability benefits under the Social Security Act may have new concerns about whether the government will allow them to keep their guns while on disability benefits. Efforts to reduce gun violence may include reinstatement of the 2016 rule. Generally, Social Security regulations may only be amended through special procedures governed under the Administrative Procedures Act, the APA. Here's the tricky part, though. Which includes a notice and comment period. However, an executive order, what the president can do, from the president is not subject to the APA's procedural limitations. If you have questions about owning a gun on disability, you should go look at that law, check it out. Here's the thing. The VA has certain restrictions and things like that. Social Security Administration currently does not have a direct go-to limitation for firearms. However, there are certain rules set up for individuals outside of the Social Security Administration that do go ahead and essentially tag people that they look into as to a restriction for what they can or should not own. Okay. Now, what we need to look at to understand this a little bit better is Biden's plan to end our gun violence epidemic from the Biden-Harris website. Joe Biden knows that gun violence is a public health epidemic. Almost 40,000 people die as a result of firearm injuries every year in the United States, and many more are wounded. Some of these deaths and injuries are the result of mass shootings that make national headlines. Others are the result of daily acts of gun violence or suicides that may not make national headlines, but are just as devastating to the families and communities left behind. Joe Biden has taken to the National Rifle Association on the national stage and won twice. In 1993, he took through Congress the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act, which established the background check system that has since kept more than 3 million firearms out of dangerous hands. That's a bit of a blanket statement. In 1994, Biden, along with Senator Dianne Feinstein, secured the passage of 10-year bans on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines as President Joe Biden will defeat the NRA again. Obviously, if you didn't know, the Joe Biden camp is extremely anti-gun. These are some of the things he got through. There were a lot of things he didn't get through that were way more anti-gun. Joe Biden also knows how to make progress on reducing gun violence using executive action. Oh, the good part. Here we go. After the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary School in 2012, President Obama tasked Vice President Biden with developing both legislative proposals and executive actions to make our communities safer. As a result of this effort, the Obama-Biden administration took more than 24 actions, including narrowing the so-called gun show loophole, increasing the number of records in the background check system, and expanding funding for mental health services. It's within our grasp to end our gun violence epidemic and respect the Second Amendment, which is limited, as President Biden will pursue constitutional, common sense gun safety policies. Here's the policy. So if this is what you guys were wondering, here it is. And as you guys know, I grew up on a farm. I believe disabled and retired people should be able to own firearms so long as they are able to pass the tests of somebody else going through the same thing by the NRA, by the whatever. Okay. My reasoning for this is that they are a class of individuals more capable of being injured because they can't run away as well usually. They are less likely to have the physical abilities to go ahead and stop somebody from charging them and hurting them and things like that. So obviously, I look at this more from what is the capacity of the individual or the group? Is that capacity at the level at which they will be able to defend themselves? At the very top of this, you have a legendary fighter in Kung Fu. At the very bottom of this, you have somebody that's 95 years old that can barely hold anything. Where do we place the retired? Where do we place the disabled on this scale? All right. President Biden claims it's within our grasp to end our gun violence epidemic and respect the Second Amendment, which is limited. As President Biden will pursue constitutional common sense gun safety policies, Biden will. So he's saying Second Amendment is a highly limited amendment. He wants to go ahead and limit it more. Hold gun manufacturers accountable. In 2005, then Senator Biden voted against the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act, but gun manufacturers successfully lobbied Congress to secure its passage. This law protects these manufacturers from being held civilly liable for their products, protection granted to no other industry. Biden will prioritize repealing this protection. There's some interesting options there. That's a little bit too blanket of a statement, but we can go into that more later. Get weapons of war off our streets. The bans on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines that Biden, along with Senator Feinstein, secured in 1994 reduced the lethality of mass shootings. But in order to secure the passage of the bans, they had to agree to a 10-year sunset provision. And when the time came, the Bush administration failed to extend them, as President Biden will. All right, first of all, when it comes to firearms, you can buy third-party parts from overseas to turn whatever these are into whatever they claim are assault weapons, whatever the definition of that may be, even though they haven't really figured that one out either. So they haven't actually done what they said they were doing. They put words on paper that actually had very little effect to do what they intended to do. Ban the manufacture and sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. If somebody's planning a mass shooting, they're probably capable of building a longer magazine with a stronger spring. Federal law prevents hunters from hunting migratory game birds with more than 3 shells in their shotgun. That means our federal law does more to protect ducks than children. It's wrong. Joe Biden will enact legislation to once again ban assault weapons. This time, the bans will be designed based on lessons learned from the 1994 bans. For example, so what's the point there? What's more to the ducks are being protected more than our children? Let's break that down just for a moment. And I'm a big fan of just thinking about what people say. I always love to do that because I find that what they're saying is not actually the result of what they're getting at. 3 shells in a shotgun. If somebody has 3 shells in a shotgun, can you explain to me how the child would be safer if there were only 3 as opposed to 5? Would it make that big of a difference? That final 4th shot, that final 5th shot? Why would they not have the capacity to just pull more out of their pocket and load them into their shotgun? All the shotguns are built nowadays for fast loading. I don't think it's actually accomplishing what their intention is. I don't see it. This time the bans will be designed, and then take for example, the retired and the disabled, right? Shaky hands, tired, can't load more even if they wanted to, right? Let's say that they don't have the capacity to push it into the spring mechanism to load it. They got to preload the thing ahead of time, right? You got somebody with weak hands, somebody that's older, somebody that's disabled. How are they going to set the gun up ahead of time? Let's say that somebody's trying to break in and they know they're coming for them. The person's running around and they're stuck with their gun and all they've got is their 6 shots. Does 3 really help them? Does it save more birds? Is it therefore better? Are the children better? Are they safer? For example, the ban on assault weapons will be designed to prevent manufacturers from circumventing the law by making minor changes that don't limit the weapon's lethality. While working to pass this legislation, Biden will also use his executive authority to ban the importation of assault weapons. Regulate possession of existing assault weapons under the National Firearms Act. Here's the biggie. Currently, the National Firearms Act requires individuals possessing machine guns, silencers, and short-barrel rifles to undergo a background check and register those weapons with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, the ATF. Due to these requirements, such weapons are rarely used in crimes. As President Biden will pursue legislation to regulate possession of existing assault weapons under the National Firearms Act. So, wait a minute. Currently, there's a ton of laws. You have to be a class 3. You got to have all this stuff to get one of those types of guns, right? You got to have all this stuff. A ton of stuff to be able to get that. The government has the opportunity to go knock on your door and search your home when you actually get into that category of things, when you get into silencers and things like that. So now he wants to go and make it even more stringent, even though the rule that he created, due to these requirements, such weapons are rarely used in crimes, already did what it was supposed to do. This sounds to me like an opportunity to just get rid of them altogether. Because when you make it almost impossible to own one, I don't own one. I can't afford them. They're so rare and expensive because of all the laws that exist. I couldn't buy one if I wanted to. There's machine guns out there. I can't buy those. It's like $25,000 for one of those things. I got student loans, got a mortgage. Buy back the assault weapons and high-capacity magazines already in our communities. Biden will also institute a program to buy back weapons of war currently on our streets. This will give individuals who now possess assault weapons or high-capacity magazines 2 options: sell the weapons to the government or register them under the National Firearms Act. Are the criminals going to sell these back to the government? Are the criminals going to go ahead and, let's just register them under the National Firearms Act? This just punishes the people that aren't going to commit the crimes. That doesn't do anything. There's a lot of things he could do to get those types of guns with high capacity off the streets. Neither of those 2 things are it. Reduce stockpiling of weapons. In order to reduce the stockpiling of firearms, Biden supports legislation restricting the number of firearms an individual may purchase per month to 1. So here's how it works, guys. Let me explain to you the long con of the government. They start out with, well, we don't think you can own whatever guns you want. Well, we don't think you can own those types of guns on top of that. Well, we don't think you can own that kind of ammo on top of that. Well, we don't think you can own that kind of high capacity option with those guns. Well, we don't think that you should be able to own a gun if you are disabled or retired, because what's your purpose with it? Well, we don't think you should own a gun unless you can only buy 1 per month, and then we're going to restrict that to basically only 1 type of a particular gun per month. You know what? You don't need guns. Let's just do what Australia did. We'll take them all away. Take them all away. You know what's funny about that? China is about to take over Taiwan. Nobody's really going to be able to stop that. They're not. They're not. Then they're going to be staring right down the barrel at Australia. And Australia took all of its firearms away from its people. Another poor choice of a nation's opportunity to defend itself. So now we'll let people only buy what. So my point is, no matter what, if you're disabled or retired, you're going to have a restriction in what guns you can actually own. By every category is going to have a restriction in it now. It's not good. Keep guns out of dangerous hands. Well, how do you define dangerous hands? The old hands or the young hands? Are they hands that have committed a crime before? Are they hands that haven't committed a crime before? Are they teenagers from underdeveloped areas and poor inner cities? What are dangerous hands? Keep guns out of dangerous hands. The federal background check system, the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, is one of the best tools we have to prevent gun violence, but it's only effective when it's used. Biden will enact universal background check legislation and close other loopholes that allow people who should be prohibited from purchasing firearms from making those purchases. Specifically, he will require background checks for all gun sales. Today, an estimated 1 in 5 firearms are sold or transferred without a background check. Biden will enact universal background check legislation requiring background check for all gun sales with very limited exceptions. such as gifts between close family members. This will close the so-called gun show and online sales loophole that the Obama-Biden administration narrowed, but which cannot be fully closed by executive action alone. You see, what he's doing is he's creating a register all the firearms situation, which means that he'll know who has them legally, which means he can take away all the legal firearms, and only the illegal people, like with the dangerous hands, will actually have these firearms. And then the disabled and retired will really, just hand over your possessions. What defense will you have if they're the only ones with the guns? So, and the government, the worst potential you could potentially have. It's ironic, too, that I see Positively Cheyenne on there. I remember we had a little bit of a discussion, some might say the heated discussion, about that other one over here about limiting purchases to one per month. I do remember getting a little bit excited. Sometimes when I talk to people about this stuff, I get a little bit upset. I will admit it. To me, I don't understand how people don't think about it all the time, and they're asleep and wake up and go, how can they do this? Anyways, reinstate the Obama-Biden policy to keep guns out of the hands of certain people unable to manage their affairs for mental reasons. Oh, here we go. The disabled are in trouble now. Which President Trump reversed. In 2016, the Obama-Biden administration finally, so just to make clear, if you have a mental impairment through disability benefits, his intention is to limit your ability to own a firearm. Now, that's tricky. Some people shouldn't have firearms because they can't pass the tests. All right? Think of the woman who got raped, has PTSD, has no way to defend herself, and we just take away the only option she has to defend herself from people that could do it to her again. Here we go. Hands of certain people unable to manage their affairs for mental reasons, which President Trump reversed. In 2016, the Obama-Biden administration finalized a rule to make sure the Social Security Administration sends to the background check system records that it holds of individuals who are prohibited from purchasing or possessing firearms because they have been adjudicated by the SSA as unable to manage their affairs for mental reasons. I'm reading what Positively Cheyenne put in there a little. There was a slight discussion with her about how she might have been wrong about her approach to this stuff. And I was rather excited in the terminology I used, which may have been slightly too aggressive with her approach to designing her logical extension of what a gun right should be. I feel very strongly about the Second Amendment because if you have a right to speak, right? And you have a right to go ahead and have a place to live, maybe, kinda. And you have a right to freedoms like religion and all this. All of it is nothing unless you have the right to defend yourself. Right? It's all worthless unless you have the right. You can talk all you want, but if you don't have teeth, it's not as easy. It's not as effective. 2016 Obama-Biden amendment. Okay, finally this rule to make sure the Social Security. All right. So what's happening right now is behind the scenes, I'm sure President Biden is handing over or having Commissioner Kijakazi hand over to different groups, ATF, DOJ, lists of people who have mental limitations, and whether or not they can handle a gun within the rules required to pass the tests for certification to own a firearm. They're probably setting up the plan to go ahead and remove the ability of individuals who have any mental limitation so that they cannot have a gun going forward. That is very likely happening in the background. But one of the first actions Donald Trump took as president was to reverse this rule. President Biden will enact legislation to codify this policy, which will essentially remove guns for those who have any mental impairments attached to their claim for disability benefits. It could be only for those people who are severe. It could be only for those people who are moderate. It could be only for those people who are mild. We don't know what it's going to be. Close the hate crime loophole. Biden will enact legislation prohibiting an individual who has been convicted of a misdemeanor hate crime or received an enhanced sentence for a misdemeanor because of hate or bias in its commission from purchasing or possessing a firearm. Yep. Okay. Who's in control of who adjudicates what a hate crime is? What is a hate crime? And then ultimately, how long will that last? Will the person always have that for the rest of their life? Will it last 10 years? That's what I hate about some of these rules. There's no get out of jail way. I don't care if the road's 10 years long, but give them a road. give them away. If they're a repeat offender, fine. Take away the, you know what I mean? I get it. They're just going to keep doing it. But you always have to give people a road, even if it's a long one, to get into the limelight of living the right choice. Otherwise, you have just told them that for the rest of their life, they are not worthy. And you want to know who becomes a criminal? People who believe they are not worthy because they don't have what the worthy have. Close the Charleston loophole. The Charleston loophole allows people to complete a firearms purchase if their background check is not completed within 3 business days. Biden supports a proposal in the Enhanced Background Checks Act of 2019, which extends the timeline from 3 to 10 business days. Biden will also direct the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, to put on his desk within his first 100 days as president a report detailing the cases in which background checks are not complete within 10 business days and steps the federal government can take to reduce or eliminate this occurrence. Close the fugitive from justice loophole created by the Trump administration. Because of actions, shadows here. Because of actions by the Trump administration, records of almost 500,000 fugitives from justice who are prohibited from purchasing firearms were deleted from the background check system. The Biden administration will restore these records and enact legislation to make clear that people facing arrest warrants are prohibited from purchasing or possessing firearms. I'd have to look at that one. That does not sound very, very Trumpy. That does not sound like him. And the online sale of firearms and ammunition. Biden will enact legislation to prohibit all online sales of firearms, ammunition, kits, and gun parts. Why? Why can't you buy them online and then have them transferred to a gun store? I've done that. That's how it works. You buy it from an online store. They transfer it to a local gun group that's nearby you. You pay $25 to $30 for them to go ahead and essentially, give you the gun. It still goes through a gun store. Create an effective program to say a lot of these things don't actually do what he's trying. He's just selling this to people who don't actually know how it works. And people are eating it up and they're all excited. They're like, yeah, this is it. This is how we're going to do it. And they just don't get it because they're not in the industry. They've never owned a gun. They never wanted a gun. They don't know what a gun is. To them, it is evil. The reality is, it is a tool to prevent rape to women. It is a tool to prevent mugging to elderly. It is a tool that helps people from having a bad day turn into an even worse day. Let's keep reading. Create an effective program to ensure individuals who become prohibited from possessing firearms relinquish their weapons. Oh, here we go. Take them all. Take them all. Federal law defines categories of individuals who are prohibited from purchasing or possessing firearms, and the federal background check system is an effective tool for ensuring prohibited persons cannot purchase firearms. But we lack any serious tool to ensure that when someone becomes newly prohibited, for example, because they commit a violent crime, they relinquish possession of their firearms. Or if they're using the firearm as part of the situation, the cops usually go and find it, right? They usually go and find it. And just to be fair here, when somebody usually commits a crime that's, a violent crime or a crime involving a firearm, they immediately begin the jail process, right? They get collected, they go in front of a judge, they begin that process. So it's almost like it's just like the moment somebody gets in trouble, we need to search their home, search their family's home, search their cousin's home, search Uncle Betty's home. I don't know why Uncle and Betty went together, to find anything that could be related to that person. If they find other guns that aren't registered, you're going to have to take those too. There are some promising models for how this could be enforced. For example, California has a mandatory process for ensuring relinquishment by any individual newly subject to a domestic violence restraining order. As president, Biden will direct the FBI and ATF to outline a model relinquishment process, enact any necessary legislation to ensure relinquishment when individuals newly fall under one of the federal prohibitions, and then provide technical and financial assistance to state and local governments to establish effective relinquishment processes on their own. So just to make it clear, when a family, and they're using basically the husbands beating the wives as like the bing, the flashy light to distract you. But let's say that somebody breaks into your house, right? And the husband goes over and defends the home, and he shoots the bad guy, but we're in California. The husband gets arrested. He gets arrested because it's California. Okay. And then all of a sudden, the ATF shows up, knocks on the door. The wife answers. Remember, the husband's, he's in jail now. The wife answers, and all of a sudden, they're there to say, trust your government. We're here to search your house for every firearm he owns, has registered, and has not registered. They now take all the firearms. They take them all. Take them all. Take them all, right? They take all the firearms, and then that woman and her children are sitting there as ducks. And you know who knows this? You know who notices this? The neighbors. The neighbors talk. They put it on their neighbor.com website. You know who's part of those neighbor.com website? People who know how to steal stuff. Because they know that there's no guns there anymore. And guess what? When you go ahead and you attack somebody who has no guns, but you have guns, and you're not worried because if you're a criminal and you're doing it, if they try to get you and get your gun, what do you care? You'll get out and you get another one. It's just moronic. It's just like people who didn't open their brain, or what I'm realizing, I used to think that they just weren't thinking. What I've realized now is it's just a long con. It's a long con to remove rights, freedoms, enslave the people, make them need the politicians, and then tinkle these little lovely YouTube channels promising money, and they will do whatever. They'll dance for you. People will dance for the YouTube channels that are promising them money. It's sad. Incentivize state extreme risk laws. Extreme risk laws, also called red flag laws, enable family members or law enforcement officials to temporarily remove an individual's access to firearms when that individual is in crisis and poses a danger to themselves or others. Biden will incentivize the adoption of these laws by giving states funds to implement them. And he'll direct the U.S. Department of Justice to issue best practices and offer technical assistance to states interested in enacting an extreme risk law. This usually comes up, although they're going to blanket it and have it affect anybody. This usually comes up when, somebody was cheating in the relationship and they lose their cool, but nothing bad happens in the immediate moment. Or, for example, somebody, they lose their job, things are really bad, they're worried they might commit suicide. There's potential here for goodness. But see, what they don't include here is how does that person get his guns back once he's okay or she's okay? Did you hear anything about that in there? No, you never do. You never do. Give states incentives to set up gun licensing. They already have a system in place, by the way. It's just not immediate like what they're shooting for here. Give states incentives to set up gun licensing programs. Biden will enact legislation to give states and local governments grants to require individuals to obtain a license prior to purchasing a gun. Because they already have that, but he's just going to give them more money. So they'll be for it. They'll be for it because the states want more money. Adequately fund the background check system. We're throwing more money at the states. The states are going to be all for it. President Obama, President Biden expanded incentives for states to submit records of prohibited persons into the background check system. As President Biden will continue to prioritize that funding and ensure that the FBI is adequately funded to accurately and efficiently handle the NICS system. Okay. If you were wondering what I just read there, I'll refresh it and rephrase it for you. President Biden wants to pay states to hand over their lists. That's exactly what that said. I'll read it again. I don't know if you caught it. President Obama and Vice President Biden expanded incentives for states to submit records of prohibited persons into the background check system. They're paying them to basically put people into their system. I mean, you'd think states would want to partake in this, but, they're going to take the money when they can take the money. Addressing the deadly combination of guns and domestic violence. The statistics tell a devastating and overwhelming story. The likelihood that a woman in a domestic violence situation will be killed increased by a factor of 5 if a gun is nearby. Now, we shouldn't be sexist here. Let's reread it now in the modern day. The statistics tell a devastating and overwhelming story. The likelihood that a gender-neutral person in a domestic violence situation will be killed increased by a factor of 5 if a gun is nearby. Half of mass shootings involve an individual shooting a family member or former intimate partner. This deadly connection tragically impacts children as well. 86% of children killed in shootings with 4 or more victims were involved in domestic or family violence. I'm not going to lie to you. Domestic violence is a huge, huge problem. Massive, massive problem. We need to focus on how to fix that. Because if we can do a lot more with that, then we can stop using that as pretty much the only scenario that they can try and say legal gun owners shouldn't have guns. You get rid of the domestic violence, there's not much there. There's really not. And look, I work with disabled people all the time. There's not that much that pushes people to the brink. There's not. If somebody kills a family member in front of that person, they go to the brink. If somebody's cheating on them and they've been married forever, they go to the brink. There's not many situations that push people to the brink. We can fix those. Biden recognizes that the gun violence and domestic violence epidemics are linked and cannot be solved in isolation. Addressing the interconnectedness of these challenges will be a core focus of Biden's anti-violence work as president. What he's saying there is he's going to make blanket gun law rules to try and fix specific instances like we just talked about. I'll read it again in case you didn't hear it. Biden recognizes that the gun violence and domestic violence epidemics are linked and cannot be solved in isolation. So he's going to go ahead and just do a big thing and have it just apply to everything, right? Hey, we're going to pass some stuff in a massive bill. That's 5,000 pages long. That nobody got a chance to read in the middle of the night. Let's not do it not during the day, during the night. That's the best approach to this stuff. The Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act of 2019, which Leader McConnell refuses to bring to the floor for a vote, includes a number of reforms to keep firearms out of the hands of abusers. Senator McConnell should ensure this legislation gets passed long before President Biden would take the oath of office. See, if they're already an abuser, they wouldn't be able to get that firearm to begin with. So, to what next level are they taking this? Now, there are people that slip through the cracks. You pass this new system, same gig, people are going to slip through the cracks. All right, Biden will enact legislation to close the so-called boyfriend loophole. Wait. 1 moment. Biden will enact legislation to close the so-called gender-neutral loophole and stalking loophole by prohibiting all individuals convicted of assault, battery, or stalking from purchasing or possessing firearms, regardless of their connection to the victim. This proposal is modeled after existing laws in California, Connecticut, Hawaii, Nevada, New York, and Pennsylvania. All places where the gun laws are terrible. It's horrible. I'm surprised New Jersey isn't on there. Biden also supports enacting the proposal to prohibit anyone under a temporary restraining order from purchasing or possessing firearm before their hearing. I have to look at the law on that. Obviously, restricting that type of individual is usually a very good thing. All right, let's keep going. In addition, and we're almost done, guys. Or I'll cut it short because it just keeps going on and on and on. There's so many things that they want to restrict. In addition, President Biden will establish a new task force on online harassment and abuse to focus on the connection between mass shootings, online harassment, extremism, and violence against women or gender-neutral people. They all say they're not going to say the genders in their writings, but yet they throw men under the bus constantly. Women can carry a gun too. They can lose their cool too. As President Joe Biden will convene a national task force with federal agencies, state leaders and advocates, law enforcement, technology experts to study rampant online sexual harassment, stalking, and threats, including revenge porn and deepfakes, and the connection between this harassment, mass shootings, extremism, and violence against women. The task force will be changed with developing cutting-edge strategies and recommendations for how federal and state governments, social media companies, schools, and other public and private entities can tackle this unique challenge. The task force will consider platform accountability, transparent reporting requirements for instances of harassment and response, and best practices. And while doing that, he will remove your right to free speech because they will start those fact checkers and they will put them to work, guys. If you think you said something that's fine, don't rely on yourself. Use those who know better. Even though they're paid to know better. There's a problem there. Well, how are they paid? Well, how do the donations come in? Oh, how are they alive? They get donations. Expand the use of evidence-based lethality. Okay, assessments by law enforcement in cases of domestic violence. All right, sometimes called risk or danger assessments are proven strategy to help law enforcement officers identify domestic violence survivors who are at high risk of being killed by their abusers. These survivors are then connected with social service programs that can offer services and safety planning. An evaluation of the program created by the Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence showed promising results. Increasing federal funding will incentivize jurisdictions to take advantage of implementing these programs more widely. It is interesting. It is interesting that we don't already have training for police officers specifically on how to see when somebody is experiencing an abused spouse syndrome, when they're trying to protect somebody that's harmed them over and over. I'm pretty sure a lot of these police departments already have that. But what politicians do is they grab a state that created a bigger program, and then they tout that as their thing that they're going to push. This is called politicians making themselves important by attaching specifically to things that have worked well. Okay, let's keep rocking. All right, so let's see. I see. Yeah, thanks for that. All right, make sure firearm owners take on the responsibility of ensuring their weapons are used safely. Put America on the path to ensuring that 100% of firearms sold in America are smart guns. Okay, smart guns are a terrible idea because the batteries will die and then all of a sudden you can't use them. That's why they never caught on. Today, we have the technology to allow only authorized users to fire a gun. For example, existing smart gun technology requires a fingerprint match before use, unless the battery dies or it doesn't work or it gets hit or it gets banged against the ground and then you pick it up and you can't use it. Anybody thinking about those chips that are supposed to be coming from China that are so amazing, yet every time you have a problem with your car, it's some chip and it's not the actual mechanical aspect of it? Yeah, I'm excited for that one. For example, existing smart gun technologies requires, okay, Biden believes we should work to eventually require that 100% of firearms sold in the U.S. are smart guns so that they can turn them off with Wi-Fi, right? But right now, the NRA and gun manufacturers are bullying firearms dealers who try to sell these guns. Nobody's trying to sell these guns. Nobody's trying to sell these guns. Nobody. They recognize, they even made movies about it, how they just fail. You can't use them when you need them. Biden will stand up against these bullying tactics and issue a call to action for gun manufacturers, dealers, and other public and private entities to take steps to accelerate our transition to smart guns. This is a terrible idea. Absolutely horrible. Just terrible. Okay, let's keep rolling. Hold adults accountable for giving minors access to firearms. Biden supports legislation holding adults criminally and civilly liable for directly or negligently giving a minor access to a firearm, regardless of whether the minor actually gains possession of the firearm. Wait, what? Regardless of whether the minor actually gains possession of the firearm? So if the kid gets it or doesn't get it, if the gun is in a place where the kid's not supposed to go, but the kid goes there, and then they say, oh, he got it, you're in trouble. If the kid doesn't go there, but potentially could have gone there, oh, all of a sudden now, line yourself up for the rest of your life. You're not going to be able to own a gun. This is another terrible thing. Require gun owners to safely store their weapons. Biden will pass legislation requiring firearm owners to store weapons safely in their homes. But what does that mean? You know, at some point it gets ridiculous. If you've got to wake up in the middle of the night, get your glasses on, turn the light on, open the drawer, open the mini safe, open the secondary safe inside it, remove the specialty thingy, insert the clip, rack the gun, you're dead already. When does it get ridiculous? Step 2. Empower law enforcement to effectively enforce our gun laws. Prioritize prosecution of straw purchasers. Straw purchasers buy a firearm on behalf of an individual who cannot pass a background check. Biden will end those loopholes by enacting a law to make all straw purchases a serious federal crime and ensure the U.S. Justice Department has sufficient resources to prioritize their prosecution. Yeah, that's a good thing. We don't want people buying guns that should not be capable of receiving those guns themselves. We don't want straw purchases in most fields. Absolutely, that's a good thing. Okay? Next thing. All right. Notify law enforcement when a potential firearm purchaser fails a background check. Too often, when prohibited persons attempting to buy a firearm fail a background check, state or local enforcement is never informed of the attempt. As President Biden will direct the FBI to set up a process to ensure timely notification of denials to state and local law enforcement, and he'll support legislation to codify this process. This empowers law enforcement to follow up and ensure prohibited persons do not attempt to acquire firearms through other means. You don't think the FBI isn't already doing this? You don't think that, and then the extension of this, why does the local sheriff need to know if you failed a background check? You didn't get the gun. Should they do an investigation for every person that fails a background check? Up to you. You guys get to vote. Require firearm owners to report if their weapon is lost or stolen. Responsible gun owners have a responsibility to inform law enforcement if their weapon is lost or stolen. Biden will enact legislation to make this law of the land. I support parts of that, and then there's other parts that I don't really like. Stop ghost guns. One way people who cannot legally obtain a gun may gain access to a weapon is by assembling a one on their own, either by buying a kit of a disassembled gun parts or 3D printing a working firearm. Biden will stop the proliferation of these so-called ghost guns by passing legislation requiring that purchasers of gun kits or 3D printing code pass a federal background check. Additionally, Biden will ensure that the authority for firearm exports stays with the State Department, and if needed, reverse a proposed rule by President Trump. This will ensure the State Department continues to block the code used to 3D print firearms from being made available on the internet. But honestly, guys, okay, just for those of you guys who don't know how the internet works, there's 3 levels to the internet. There's the stuff we all play in, the Google stuff, the searchable stuff. Then there's a gray area, and then there's the dark web. If you haven't been to the dark web, think of it like the Enchanted Woods in Harry Potter. There's a lot of things that are very disturbing there. You want to look at it that way, that's a cute way to look at it. But on the dark web, the government does not have access to the anonymous players who are dealing things. Special fight clubs, special drug clubs, special this, special that, special, sex abuse club, all that stuff. That is what the dark web is. It's a place for illegal activity to have its little commerce area. Where do you think people get these 3D print options right now? Sure, some of them buy them on the Googleable area. There's a bing, and there it is. But most of them know. Most of them know where to go specifically into the dark web to get this. And if they don't, they'll find out. Oh, which, by the way, the federal government will never be able to shut that down. They don't have the capacity. They can't travel the world to shut down all those servers. They try, but it's just not going to happen. Reform, fund, and empower the U.S. Justice Department to enforce our gun laws. Here comes the big cost part. Remember, we're all going to have to pay taxes for them to remove our guns. Biden will direct his Attorney General to deliver to him within his first 100 days a set of recommendations for restructuring the ATF and related Justice Department agencies to most effectively enforce our gun laws. Biden will then work to secure sufficient funds for the Justice Department to effectively enforce our existing gun laws, increase the frequency of inspection of firearm dealers, and repeal riders that get in the way of that work. That's right. More taxes. Let's pay for them to remove our freedoms. Here we go. Hey, you didn't think you were paying to be stripped? You would be wrong. Direct the ATF to issue an annual report on firearm trafficking. This report will provide officials with critical information to better identify strategies for curbing firearm trafficking. All right, so this keeps going on and on. Trauma care centers address epidemic of suicides by firearms, prohibit the use of federal funds to arm or train educators to discharge firearms. A lot of these things train healthcare and other service providers in trauma-centered care. All right, look, a lot of these things I have a problem with because I actually know the process, the industry of firearms. And my concern is that this is the beginning to limiting a retired or disabled person's ability to own a firearm. You want to get your check? You can't be protected. You then must become slaves to essentially whatever great trauma-related group is out there rioting for the night, rioting for the day, lighting the police department on fire, throwing firebombs into a courthouse. Terrible, terrible things. I need you to understand that if people had an education, literacy, if you will, in firearms, in guns, in self-protection, there would be a lot less rapes. There would be a lot less tragic moments. You'd have a lot more heroes. We have a lot of heroes that are corporations, but these corporations, all they're really doing is showing you how amazing they are. Oh, look at how we donated this. Well, they had to donate. They needed the tax write-off. I would like to see human beings, once again, become our superheroes. I would like to see human beings, once again, become the focus point of America as opposed to corporations, foreign interests, politicians. I would like to see us find our American superheroes again. Because if we don't find what our American superheroes are going to be, then we'll have no problem at all erasing not only the memory of the past ones, but also going forward and making sure that people are receiving the rights, the benefits, and the opportunities that they deserve to make America a better place. If we don't have that, then it's game over. Just think about this for a moment. If you make people unimportant and you make corporations, politicians, the government, all powerful and important, then it's very easy to stomp out people. Guys, I hope you have an absolutely wonderful night. I know that some of you will disagree and believe that firearms should be taken completely out of America. I would promote one idea to you. Obviously, nobody saw this whole COVID thing coming. Obviously, nobody saw the wars that are going on, the aggression between Russia, China, and all these different places. Obviously, you are not seeing that in the same light as I do. But the greatest army on earth in America is the United States American people. It's the people. It's not the U.S. military. It's not the Army, the Navy. It's not the Marines. It's the American people. That's how many people own firearms. That's how many people can change the outcome. I beg you, Google it once to learn one thing about why individuals who are disabled or retired should have the right to bear a firearm, the right to conceal a firearm, and the right to go ahead and stand their ground. Have an absolutely wonderful night. I'll catch you guys later. Bye-bye.